Hey there, welcome to episode 131 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this on Tuesday, August 19, 2025. The time is just about 3 p.m. Normally recording these earlier in the day, but busy. So here we are, the odds and ends update. This is just some stuff to put together. There's not one particular thing that would take up an entire episode of the usual Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. So kind of a best of, but actually some of these things are kind of already mentioned or have been brought up previously. So it's kind of wrapping up a few here's what's up on that thing items. On this episode 131, we usually publish on Tuesday, so we're recording it on Tuesday. Don't forget, we are also available more recently on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music/podcasts, and our YouTube channel. You can visit youtube.com/@Innovate for Vegas, one word, Innovate for Vegas, just like our website. And there's a link to it on our innovateforvegas.org website. If you want to find our YouTube page or our Spotify for Creators profile, which has links to the Apple and the Amazon and so on. So if you are looking for more access, more ways to listen to, and maybe someday watch our Innovate for Vegas Foundation media content, including this audio program and maybe more, do check those out. If you are not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, we are a Nevada nonprofit. We are a 501c3 public charity. We were founded in 2022, January of 2022. We decided to reboot the former Code for Vegas, which had been in Vegas about a decade prior, a little bit less than a decade prior. Part of a Code for America national effort to connect with and empower, enable civic tech volunteers and whatnot. But anyway, we rebooted Code for Vegas as Code for Vegas Foundation, an independent 501c3 organization. We incorporated in June of 2022. We received our IRS determination of our 501c3 status. In October, we renamed to the Innovate for Vegas Foundation because innovation is far less specific. It knows no bounds. Innovate for Vegas Foundation, hoping to make our smart city smarter. Our purpose is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Our communities could be here in the greater Vegas area or beyond, and that would be through some collaboration and outreach, thinking big, and making it happen. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, and there are so many more places now, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I will read, one sentence, and the links for today's episode, which are the same as last week, and so on. No reference links for this particular episode. So there are some links to our homepages and two of our essential meta initiatives. We'll get to that in a second. So, stay tuned while I read the summary, and then we'll get into the episode. The summary is thus, this episode, a collection of various bits of updated novel notion as the summer heat meets a new school year and a calmed tourist season. No time like the present to examine community elevation on a civic volunteer basis. ... I'm a big fan of the ellipsis. There's a virtual one I just inserted there. The links for today's episode, again, as they were last week and so on. The Innovate for Vegas homepage for our activities. It's the good old innovateforvegas.org. Innovate, F-O-R, Vegas, no spaces or punctuation. Innovateforvegas.org. That's where you'll find information about our initiatives and our component projects and our team and planning for those initiatives and component projects and so on. It is hosted on GitHub, and it connects with, or it will connect with all of our repositories and whatnot directly. The deployment of the website is always a work in progress. That's a term I like to use frequently. Some would say overused, but we'll see. It's also a work in progress. Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage. Innovate for Vegas, again, Innovate, F-O-R, Vegas.foundation. That's the business side. At some point, it became very clear that mixing the business of operating our foundation, which is, again, a Nevada nonprofit corporation, and the initiatives, the civic volunteer efforts that we are espousing, trying to promote and place on display. Those are kind of two sides of the same coin, so I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. So we have two websites that both lead to the same place. That's our foundation. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is, again, a real business. So it has, well, I'll get into this. I won't. I'll preempt myself when I've already got content. I've got my notes on which I'm basing, as usual, on which I'm basing this episode. I like to prepare ahead of time. Projectact.info, act, that's ACT, project hyphen, the key next to the 0 on most keyboards, project hyphen ACT.info, where you can learn a little bit more about our autonomous cohort tessellation. This entire initiative is designed to connect cohorts. It's designed to enable discovery and to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration between cohorts, but also to enable discovery amongst people in the world so that they can find the sorts of things that civic volunteers are working on and maybe join up or collaborate. You never know. Discovery is always a problem. So Project ACT, we came up with this in October of 2022. It was originally the autonomous cohort transformation, and that's still on the table. But the tessellation, a mosaic, if you will, tiles representing cohorts of one or more people and their projects and initiatives on which they are working and connecting everyone. Lofty goal. The projectact.info website is absolutely a work in progress, so don't go there looking for something cool and impressive. But the Project ACT organization on GitHub has the beginnings of our initiative there. Agileforvolunteers.org, Agile, F-O-R, volunteers.org, is Agile based on the original Agile methods, tools and methods, the methodology, the mindset. Agile originally back in 2021, I believe it was, 2001. February of 2001, is that right? I think so. It's been a while since I've reflected on the details. Agile for Volunteers, based on those original thinkings about whole team and not spending too much time on specs, but focusing on what that whole team wants to build and why. And also, unlike Agile, not developed for software projects and software developers. Our civic volunteer organization is not only focused on software. Not everything is an app. So Agile for Volunteers aims to enable whole teams of a diverse collection of people with different skills. Sometimes you're a coder, sometimes you like mechanical, sometimes you like translating languages, sometimes you like testing things, sometimes you like telling this story to the world and helping to get the word out. Everybody's a part of the team. There is so much to do. So Agile for Volunteers aims to coordinate the always undervalued contributions of time, effort, and expertise by volunteers on our civic-oriented projects, thus civic volunteers. Agile for Volunteers, also a work in progress, but we're hoping not only to make it work for us, but open that up for everyone to try out. It's always a work in progress, but I like to get that link out there along with Project ACT, just so it's not new to anyone as they come online. So let's get this episode started for real with a remander. I kind of touched on this in that link section about our foundation versus org websites. As mentioned, we have the two websites, each focused on a different side of that single coin that is our Nevada nonprofit corporation. Don't let this confuse anything. We are one legal entity, but we have two different focus areas and possibly two audiences to serve in those areas. On the one hand, we have our civic volunteer initiatives and all that goes into maintaining that ongoing effort, which all align with our purpose, again, to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. On the other hand, we are an actual corporation, a Nevada nonprofit corporation, in fact. And so we must have a board of directors and a bank account and bylaws, and we file a 990 tax return each year and so on. So that's two different sorts of questions we aim to answer. It could be all one website, sure. but there are also email addresses and document separation. Administratively, these again are all one big happy corporation, nonprofit, be it. So, but yeah, it's sort of a partition. It's like having the cool stuff on the first floor and all the business on the second floor, or vice versa, if you like. The two websites allow for a crafting of information presentation for each audience. Although, ironically, if you visit both websites today, they will probably look very similar, because that's the starting point, is copying one over to the other. And then we can start fiddling. And of course, some will find themselves interested in both, which is totally fine. That's great. Some elements, like this audio program, will apply to both, sometimes leaning towards the business side, more times leaning toward the activity side, the actual initiatives, projects, methods, and so on. Today's episode will do a bit of both, in the middle somewhere. Now, one pressing item, our board of directors still looking to fill at least 2 seats for our coming year. We're actually already in that year. We don't stipulate this in our bylaws, so one of the first things we need to vote on when we have some board members seated is the beginning of a term being aligned with the fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. So our fiscal year ends on June 30th. Why? Because when we change our board membership, we need to refile with the Nevada Secretary of State. But we also need to file annually by the end of our fiscal year, June 30th. So that's our annual list update, where we update the Secretary of State on who our governance is, our board of directors, and so on. Personally, so we can save on the filing fee, which is $50. Frugality for the win. Now, once we have more incoming donations and so on, maybe this won't be such a concern. On the other hand, why set out to spend extra money that's not really needed? So if we have our 1 year alignment on our fiscal year, so that anybody joining our board today would be a board member until the end of June 30th, 2026, at which point they could decide to stay on. Our board members serve a 1 year term that is renewable automatically for 20 terms. Why do this? So that you can decide you have other ways that you need to spend your time and so on. It just makes it, the implication is intended to be, you're here for as long as you'd like to be, up to 20 years. But we do understand that people have busy things to get to. And so we ask for a 1 year commitment at a time. And this is something that will also be found in the Agile for Volunteers approach to time commitments. Not 1 year, but similar idea. If you're curious, our board of directors needs to be at least 3 unrelated people, which that's the IRS really prefers that for nonprofits. For 501 charities, 501c3s, which will keep the government types at the IRS happy. And it is a good thing to have a few diverse opinions to help steer the ship, of course, so to speak. Personally, I would like to have 5 people. We're still relatively new, so 5 would be a good amount. With at least one more person aside from myself located in the greater Vegas area, there's no other constraints. You don't even have to be a U.S. citizen. You certainly don't need to be a resident of Nevada. You just have to be 18 and interested and interesting. So I'd like to have one other person in the greater Vegas area so that we can reach out a bit more locally to various people in various industries and various government agencies and the government staff of our cities and our county and so on. Not that we are entangled, but it's always nice to have that communication and to have people familiar with what we're doing, basically telling the story. But that's true also elsewhere beyond Nevada. Legally, we need to have 1 annual board meeting. We have tried having monthly meetings last year. Monthly meetings, it's not really necessary. We don't have that much stuff going on. So ad hoc meetings are probably more likely. That is, we need to have a board meeting to discuss this thing, a material change, some expense, or some partnership, or some other policy changes, et cetera, the things that would fall into the purview of our directors. The required annual meeting, of course, we would wrap up end of fiscal year business, approve any new board members, make sure that we are on the record for those who are re-upping, so to speak, who are staying on the board if they're already. and so on. So the usual end of year business for our annual board meeting, and then any interstitial ad hoc meetings as needed. This seems to be the more sensible way to go, especially we're only in year 4, still young. Virtual meetings, of course. Oh, our directors, all of our corporate governance, everybody involved in the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, all uncompensated volunteers. So we have been asked before, what's the compensation and time commitment? Well, it's easy. None, and vanishingly small amounts of time. You're all civic volunteers, so am I. I have a personal issue with having paid people direct unpaid people, so it's just easier all the way around if we are all giving to our communities and becoming a part of something which I believe will be quite interesting in the near term, especially if the greater Vegas area is indeed intent on becoming a global innovation hub. So we're all in this together. I'm thinking about adding a board of advisors. That's not in our bylaws, but it probably would be. So that would be another thing to ponder when we have our board seated for this year. Something we started off back in 2022 when we first were getting our org up and running. And something I would like to revisit is a less formal board of advisors. This would be organized more almost like a community of practice, perhaps maybe communities of practice, if we should be so lucky to have that, a larger number of people, with the main focus being direction, mentorship, and advice, of course, on the activities or initiative side. So in other words, this would not be formal meetings and no legal commitment, no filings with the state or anything like this. But, you can think of it as mentors or a way to participate that is not necessarily so hands-on, though it could be. This differs from our first attempt where we were really just looking for advisors with little in the way of notion concerning what that meant. So these would be people who wanted to be a part of what we were trying to accomplish, but not in a formal way. Now, this many years later, this is very specifically people who are interested in the initiatives as they are at any given time, possible new initiatives or changes that might impact how our organization can make progress in general, a purpose statement and any particular focus at any given time, and maintain interest and energy and so on, and communicate with the board of directors now and then on where we are headed and how we are going along the way, how we're doing along the way, And so this is an informal role as an advisor on our board of advisors, but it would be much more focused on interaction with our civic volunteers and our initiatives, not so much the business side. Ideally, advisors will take an interest in a mentoring level of participation, not necessarily working on initiatives specifically, so hands-on, but taking part in conversations, team meetings, and similar to engage with people who are working on initiatives. Probably these would be younger or earlier in their career or innovation journey. Whatever they are doing, they don't have to be coders. So you're probably conjuring an image of a bunch of people with their laptops writing code. And no, doesn't have to be. Could be, doesn't have to be. In fact, I kind of hope it is not only that. And optionally jumping in to participate more actively as they might wish to. So the board of advisors need not be hands-on contributors. They would be acting in an advisory, almost like an advisor. If you've ever worked on a project in a school setting, your teacher or professor might offer some suggestions or advice, but is not necessarily working with you on your project. They're sort of lending their insights, and maybe they're grading you. That's not the case here. Also ideally, advisors will bring a variety of interests, their own, and focal areas, their own experiences and expertise and so on, areas to the mix. Like the cadre of volunteers we hope will fill our cohort locally and beyond. Coding is a part of the effort. Software is a tool in the toolbox that includes storytelling and testing and computer hardware, mechanical and user experience, and language translation. And there's an ellipsis there again. These and more, all supporting a larger initiative, something made up of many moving parts, as we say sometimes, intended to address a particular challenge. And so our board of advisors could be, and ideally will be, so diverse as the types of interests and focal areas that people will bring to our cohort to pursue our initiatives. That's the idea, anyway. How about some infrastructure? And I am it's going to sound like I'm treating people like parts of infrastructure, but it's the tools and the interactions and the processes and whatnot between and the people that people will use and between people and so on that are the infrastructure. The actual people are what make our organization go. It's what makes our organization, period. So keep that in mind. Last week, we covered intersecting education. Now that the school year here in Clark County, Southern Nevada, has gotten off to another start for this year, we really do need to engage with the young people and the intellectually curious of all ages to establish and or cultivate our local culture of innovation. Without this, the journey will be long, tough, and lonely. So we need to get more people involved. Despite what you may be reading in the headlines or hearing from people around you or from you yourself concerning artificial intelligence replacing people, we are leaning more so, much more so, into people contributing to the initiative efforts we are driving, not artificial intelligence. AI is a tool just like anything else. It is not a replacement for civic volunteer and civic volunteer ethos. So let's work with people and use AI, not the other way around. I have looked around at our other former brigades and what they are working on around the country, mostly software applications aimed at things like food insecurity, civics of one kind or another, elections and access to government services and how to interact with local government and so on, community well-being and things of this nature. Nothing wrong with any of these. They're all important. They're all useful. They're all probably essential in any particular locality. So I'm not discounting those in the slightest. Those are all good. But we continue to have a problem with discovery and a more difficult problem to get over, collaboration. This is a weird reality that will take some real marketing or even better, some success stories. We are pursuing the two initiatives I've talked about a bit in previous episodes, Project ACT and Agile for Volunteers. And remember those links. Neither with anywhere near ideal levels of participation at present. The consulting group of me, myself, and I at this point are doing those websites and other such things. So bear with me as we get those continuously improving over time. But we are aimed squarely at solving meta problems with those. The value of these, and there's an ellipsis in there too, the value of these may not be immediately obvious to those who are all in on the Code for America Brigade model. And that is true of many of the, like I said, I've visited virtually or I've read about what these various former brigades are doing, what they're pursuing and how. And which is why we're saving outreach to former brigades until much, much later. We're trying to do something new. And so it'd be best to reach out to people who are trying to do for themselves something new. We are not a former brigade, they may say, and so we have no experience with those processes and methodologies and mindsets, so we can start with a clean slate. The best demos are real outcomes. Perhaps, so working with people who appreciate novel solutions to old problems will help with not only our getting the word out, so to speak, but also in improving these notions. Both Project ACT and Agile for Volunteers are intended to improve with more eyeballs on them, as they like to, as we say, more people using, modifying, updating, improving both of these. So hopefully they will become useful for everyone. The joy and beauty of open source, the value of open source. The discovery mechanism is not only for engaging fellow civic volunteers, and that's part of Project ACT, is to make efforts discoverable, cohorts and their efforts, in the civic tech space perhaps, but let us not be so specific. So a lot of civic volunteerism goes into civic tech. That was a major focus of Code for America, for example. But there's more to all of this than just the tech. Like I said, not everything is an app, but also to get help to those in our own backyard here in the greater Vegas area so that they know we exist and understand what we are hoping to accomplish, why, and how they can become involved if they want to, say, co-creation for the win. So work with us externally, not something almost like an advisor, but part of the actual communities that we are trying to elevate, right? To make our communities better. Well, they can be a part of the public side of that, the people out in the world who will hopefully find the things that we are working on useful and problem solving and so on. and getting feedback from them during is ideal. Why not listen to people while we are working on something than waiting until the end? And this is part of the whole team approach of Agile anyway. Include the customer, and that's where they would be. Or perhaps simply act as fans and supporters. These people could, especially if they would like to donate financially to our cause, but that's another episode. Donations are a tricky thing. So far, we've operated on a budget of almost $0. This is not a statement on the value of my time. Playing nice with others. That's the section head for my notes here. It's intended to be sort of sarcastic, I suppose. I've talked about recently, about our interactions with the city of Las Vegas. Code for Vegas was from a different time, a decade ago, different people involved and so on. Nowadays, it is very much a show us what you're working on mentality. So we have to get there. The Code for America model revolved around forming municipal partnerships. And I see this in the current state of affairs with former brigades tackling problems with partners in their localities. This is not a bad thing, but it is not a great way to build a sustainable catalog of initiatives that can be sustained into the future. If initiatives depend on these partnership relationships, especially if they are sponsored and whatnot, and if the partnership comes to an end under whatever circumstances and funding ends, does the project get archived or does it simply stop? Does it reach an end of life? I kind of see that as the case in my explorations. While all of our initiatives today, as I am recording this episode, are self-driven, so we're not working with partners, we are not beholden to external influence, external direction, external funding, etc. We are not against collaboration, though we do want to maintain open source initiatives which survive the end of any collaboration, which is to say the end of a partnership after a particular period of time, or maybe there's a funding cut or whatever the case. It's to be expected. And for example, we work with local bureaucracy or local NGOs with fixed budget and timeline. Again, these things can all change, can come to an end. If those reach an endpoint, the work on any initiative should be allowed to continue if appropriate. So we don't want to say, well, we can't work on this open transit initiative, or we can't work on our open data capture because our partner, whoever that might have been, maybe it was the RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, or maybe it was the GIS office of the city of Las Vegas, whoever a partner might be, if they decide, or if the time comes that the collaboration has to end, the work we are doing should not end. So that would always be the terms, is that we are always welcome or encouraged or enabled or legally able to continue work. All of our initiatives should be considered ongoing in perpetuity for the purposes of, if nothing else, teaching experience, right? Here's a thing you can work on, and you're probably thinking, oh, software projects, but it could be anything. So anything we're working on in any form should always be, let's say, owned. It should always be in the catalog of initiatives and component projects that the people who want to participate with our organization can continue to work on without asking permission, so to speak, without saying, hey, this project has been archived because our partner ended the relationship, ran out of money, came to the natural end of a period of time for collaboration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Our first challenge, though, is to address the show don't tell challenge, which, as I've described here in Vegas, is the case. We need to show our local people what we are doing, not describe it. This is something I've spoken about previously, again and again, and I probably will continue to. This is something unusual in a place that wants to be a global innovation hub. They must be shown. There is no blue sky conversation. There are a couple of reasons to have at least one more local director on our board of directors, aside from myself, and a board of advisors who are familiar with what the initiatives are and how we are progressing and so on, so that we can tell a story in our locality that will help to reach a lean in or aha moment. That is to say, people will lean in to hear more. Tell me more about this project or initiative that you're working on. It's good to have multiple people telling a story so that people, oh, I heard this from oh yes, we're both advisors with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, helping our local innovators pursue community elevating initiatives. For example, this is a general chicken and egg problem, perhaps. If we are not on the radar, then nobody knows what we're doing. And how can they participate or collaborate? And if we don't have any of that, then it is more difficult to get on the various radar screens, so to speak. The plan here is to progress with the what. What are we working on? Well, here it is. You can see it. You can try it. You can touch it, play with it, use it, so that we can have something to show, and then get it out there into our local world and see if we get any sort of that lean in moment. Aha, now I see what you guys are up to. This is why our initial foci, I'm still on the fence about that, foci, but I checked the pronunciation. Foci is correct. Foci is something, sometimes people go in that direction. Foci are intended to engage the general population at the Greater Vegas area, So we're starting local, but we also want to work with others in other places so that we might later focus on niche issues and gaps that impact smaller subsets of our local population, or perhaps visitors to our little oasis from other places. And then we can work with those other places. So, in some sense, the Greater Vegas area becomes the center of the innovation universe. I'll have to talk to the county people about that. Speaking of visitors, this is something I have mentioned many times as perhaps one of the top 3 reasons those not in the Greater Vegas area might find collaboration on our initiatives interesting. I've talked about these things previously. If we avoid getting too wrapped up in the headlines of today regarding tourism decline for the second and possibly the third quarter this year, the Greater Vegas area has a lot of visitors, somewhere in the region of 40 million annually, from a fairly diverse collection of localities, that's different places, cultures, that's what people are up to in those places, and focus areas. Some people come here for trade shows, a non-trivial number. Some people come here for fun and entertainment. Some people come here for the food. Some people come here for the sights. Who knows? Who knows? People come here for many reasons. And now the final section. These are even shorter or smaller facets. I didn't really have enough to say an entire section. I try to have sections of 3 bullet items to cover, and then whatever I ad hoc in there. So there's more for another time. Focusing on reusable efforts is something I am not seeing out in the field. I've mentioned that I take a look around at what other organizations, former brigades most often are working on out in the civic tech world, the volunteer civic tech world. Writing one-off applications seems like it could be a waste of effort, or at least this might be leaving something on the table. On the one hand, building on a working platform within a cohort might enable better starting points with more robust tools. And on the other, it might enable the benefits of cross-cohort collaboration. So that's what we're looking at. This is why our initiatives are designed so far, to work together, to reuse parts and so on. So I have a diagram that I created somewhere. I'll have to publish that on our site. But essentially, our Smart Social initiative is about connecting people and data. No, it's not Twitter. It's the actual business, if you like, of connecting people and data so that we can have a network of humans and sensor data and so on, and put those together in meaningful ways. The Smart Calendar puts together time and place with person so that we can see, we have some visibility into what is going on in our locality. That's not a Vegas thing. That would be anywhere. Essentially a community calendar implemented using standard calendar tools, not a WordPress plugin. That's awful, right? So Smart Social would then be a component that can be used for MyMuni and Welcome or Open Transit or the Open Data Capture Platform. The Open Data Capture Platform would be about capturing and republishing, so consuming and producing, capturing new, producing for open data style consumption and interaction with the current open data data sets that are maintained by the city of Las Vegas. So that whole layer of infrastructure could make use of Smart Social to connect the actual data with humans, but would be able to store and manipulate the data in ways that are compatible with open data platform requirements, expectations, and so on. So we don't have to start from scratch to implement our open data capture platform. Same with Open Transit, could make use of some of the elements of the MyMuni platform, which will reuse some of the reuse some of the smart social components, right? So if we can start building these reusable components, now we can add applications, or instead of saying, oh, we're going to start from nothing and have a standalone application that will eventually disappear and everybody will stop working on it. Try to make things reusable. And that's software. I've given a software example, but try to make things designed to be reused or used in creative ways. That's absolutely a job and life skill, by the way. There's over-reliance on generative AI. It's something that has filled at least 2 episodes of this very program, if I'm not mistaken. Our contributing document goes into the focus on humans collaborating over use of AI to do the work for us. Let us try to remember AI is a tool and not a replacement for humans. Don't even talk about the job world right now. This is something that will almost certainly come up again and again, especially given the focus Greater Vegas itself is placing on artificial intelligence, forming one of the future tech pillars of our nerd oasis. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes. We will have to see what we see. Our media game in general needs to get some polish on it. Programming like this, it's part of our media game. This is one way to reach out and engage, whether that means connecting with other cohorts, if others want to listen to this podcast or previous episodes to see what we're up to learn more about how we are doing what we're doing. We want to reach local innovators, students, and those new to the innovation landscape here in the Greater Vegas area and what we are trying to do with it and in it. Our own communities at large. This is all always a work in progress, which is true of everything we are trying to accomplish. And that is the end of this episode, which is probably going to be about 35, 37 minutes, somewhere in there, all told. Keeping it short, keeping it brief. So hopefully this was a useful little sync up between anyone who hasn't really heard every single episode, all 131. There was an episode 0. All 131 previous episodes up until today. By no means a comprehensive summary, but just a little update. We do need to fill in our board of directors. That is sort of essential, but there are some other things. I can only fit so many hats on my head. So there's some other things to focus on. The board of directors seats being filled is not blocking progress, but it is also a distraction from progress. So time allocation, time management is key. I just wanted to get some of these details out there for our ever-growing listenership. And don't forget, we are now on YouTube. I think it's been about 2 weeks now. We're now on YouTube. You can hear the audio programming, and we will eventually add some video if we start doing interviews again or discussions, or if we have another hackathon coming up or things like this. Video is always a nice way to do those things. But the audio notes, these audio essays on where things are, what we're up to, and so on, will continue. And you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Apple Podcasts. You can find them on Amazon. I think it's Amazon Podcasts, but it's part of Amazon Music, Spotify, of course. And we'll see if we can get us found in more places, and so on and so on. So thanks for listening as always. And by all means, reach out if you're interested in conversation, participation. If you're just curious, we're always here. InnovateForVegas.org or InnovateForVegas.Foundation. Take care now. Cheers.